The first thing I remember is the sound. Not shouting, not sirens, not even the judge's voice. It was that sharp crack of wood on wood, the gavel hitting the bench, and how absolutely nothing changed after it. The woman in uniform kept moving toward me anyway, her boots loud against the courtroom floor, her hand drifting toward her weapon like this was her house, and I was an uninvited guest. In that second standing there with everyone watching, I realized something that made my stomach go cold. This wasn't about what I'd done, this was about who she thought I was. And in her mind, I was already guilty. You know what I mean? She had that look. If you've ever been on the wrong end of it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The little smile that isn't really a smile, the eyes that scan you not for facts, but for excuses. She didn't see a person. She saw a story she'd already written, and I was just supposed to play my part. But let me rewind, because none of this makes sense without the beginning. That morning started out normal, boring even. I was driving through a coastal city, the kind of place where the air smells like salt and sunscreen year-round, heading to an event that wasn't even about me. I'd spent years in high-stress environments, and this was supposed to be one of those easy days. Coffee in the cup holder, radio, low thoughts drifting. My uniform was hanging in the back seat, covered out of sight. At that moment, I didn't look like anything special. Just another woman in a nice car minding her own business. Then the lights came on behind me. I checked my speed. Perfect. Hands on the wheel, windows down, movement slow. I'd learned a long time ago that calm can be misinterpreted as defiance, but panic gets you hurt. So calm is what I stick with. The officer took her time approaching, circling my car like she was hunting for something wrong. She leaned in and snapped license and registration like basic politeness was optional. I asked why I was being stopped. She repeated herself slower, louder, like I was 5 years old or didn't speak English. When I reached for the glove compartment, she dropped her hand to her holster and told me to watch it. Her eyes flicked from my face to my hands and back again, searching for a reason to escalate. She looked at my documents, laughed under her breath, and then came the questions. Whose car is this? What do you do for a living? When I answered, she laughed again. A laugh that said, yeah, right. A laugh that said, people like you don't belong in things like this. When she ordered me out of the car, claiming she smelled something that absolutely wasn't there, I knew how this would go if I pushed back. So I stepped out. That's when she put her hands on me. Rough. Unnecessary. Like she needed to prove something to herself. She searched me, found nothing, and arrested me anyway. Disorderly conduct, resisting. All because I didn't fit the version of me she'd already decided on. As I sat in the back of her cruiser staring at the cage, the heat, the hard plastic seat, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I memorized her face, her badge number, her voice. Because some fights aren't meant to be won in the moment. Weeks later, I was sitting in a courtroom that smelled like old coffee and floor cleaner, watching that same officer take the stand. She looked comfortable there, confident, like the room belonged to her. She told her story smoothly, effortlessly, like she'd practiced it 100 times. I swerved, I yelled, I attacked her. She was calm, professional, restrained. Every word was a lie. The judge barely looked up. The prosecutor nodded along. I felt that familiar weight in my chest, the one that comes from realizing the system isn't even pretending to listen to you. But my lawyer did something smart. He didn't rush. He let her talk. He let her dig. He asked about video footage, about data, about her body camera being off at exactly the wrong moment. Her answers got sharper, more defensive. And then she said it. A word she thought fit me perfectly. A word heavy with history and contempt. It landed in the room like a slap. That was the moment everything shifted. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up slowly and walked to the stand. Not because I was trying to make a point, but because this is how I'd been trained to carry myself. Calm, direct, honest. When I stated my occupation and rank, I heard a sound behind me that was almost funny. A short, disbelieving laugh. She thought I was lying. She said so out loud, accused me of pretending of mocking the court. That's when the footage played. Not hers, mine. Clear audio. Clear video. Her voice, her slur, her lies. The room went dead silent. You could feel people realizing all at once that they'd been watching the wrong story unfold. She lost it. She stepped away from her table, shouting, pointing, calling me a liar, a fraud. And then she did the one thing no one expected. She rushed me. Not like an officer. Like someone who'd been exposed and couldn't handle it. For most people, that kind of moment turns into chaos. Screaming, flailing, fear. For me, it felt oddly familiar. Time slowed down. Training kicked in. I didn't hit her. I didn't hurt her more than necessary. I redirected her momentum, controlled her balance, and put her on the ground safely, firmly. Done. When the bailiffs rushed in, weapons drawn, I raised my hands and spoke clearly. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't angry. I was finished. The judge ordered her disarmed. The charges against me were dismissed on the spot. Just like that, the narrative flipped. But here's the thing people don't always like to hear. That wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Someone in the courtroom had recorded everything. The video hit the internet before I even got home. Millions of views. People started asking questions. Digging. Patterns emerged. Complaints. Cover-ups. Things that had been buried for years suddenly had daylight on them. When she lost her job, she thought that was the punishment. When she lost her badge, she thought that was rock bottom. But desperation makes people reckless. She got involved with the wrong crowd, trying to make fast money, still convinced she was the victim. That decision destroyed her. Federal charges. Conspiracies. Evidence stacked high. The same system she'd abused came down on her like a hammer. Years in prison. No shortcuts. No favors. Years passed. My life moved on, but I didn't forget. Not because I was obsessed with her, but because what happened wasn't unique. It just happened to be visible. Eventually, laws changed. Oversight tightened. My case became a reference point, a lesson taught to people who were supposed to protect others. One afternoon, I was sitting at home when I saw her again on the news. Older, smaller, wearing orange, and I didn't feel satisfaction the way movies tell you you're supposed to. I felt something quieter, something heavier, because none of it had to happen. Not for her, not for me. People ask me all the time if I'm proud of what happened, if it felt good to win, and I always say the same thing. This was never about winning. It was about refusing to accept a lie someone tried to make permanent. So here's my question to you. How many stories like this never get told? How many people don't have footage, or a lawyer, or a moment where the truth breaks through? Where do we draw the line between authority and abuse, between suspicion and prejudice? Think about it. Talk about it. Argue about it if you need to. And if you've ever seen something like this or lived through it yourself, drop your story in the comments. Because silence doesn't protect the innocent. It protects the pattern.